Psycho, convicted felon, American president Kanks has 5 kids, 2 of which I refer to as Dumb and Dumber. And Dumb and Dumber, I think you can figure out immediately who I'm talking about, Don Jr. and Eric. Dumber has announced that he wants to run for president. Eric Trump floats replacing his dad with a 2028 presidential run. So this is just, run him. This guy has no riz. He's a complete psycho. And there is news coming out now that the Trump family has enriched themselves to the tune of over $5 billion with these crypto schemes, the grifting, the online flea market, the riffraff, the knickknacks, the Bibles. These guys are absolute con men. So why don't you run, Dumber? MAGA, run him. Let's do it.
How about Dumb as the vice presidential candidate? Here's what I look at these boys and I think Donald Trump was affirmative action of rich parents. Absolutely. These two, I don't even think that they could bankrupt casinos. That's how I just think they can't. They're so incompetent. I'm surprised they're able to get up and put their pants on. They're so emasculated. They're pitiful. And on top of everything else, they're meaner than rattlesnakes because they were raised by a sociopath.
Yeah, these people are deeply damaged, broken people, as many in the MAGA movement are. You just have a collection of emotionally stunted and undeveloped human beings within the administration. But then if you think down to your personal life and you think about the people that you know that are triple Trumpers, these people are very emotionally immature, emotionally stunted, cruel, black and white thinkers. That's the through line and the common thread in all of this. All right. Sometimes Kanks says the quiet part out loud. Before he went on his weekend at Bernie's, I'm going to hide from the press because I've had some sort of, and I'm going to speak like he does, stroke or quote, medical emergency. We don't know what it is. He did an interview with the Daily Caller and he says the following: Israel is amazing. Israel was the strongest lobby I've ever seen. They had total control over Congress, and now they don't. All right. I went in, you can go read this whole article and read the whole quote, but this was really interesting to me on multiple fronts. Number one, he's admitting that Israel had the strongest lobby in Congress, and I think has the strongest lobby in Congress. Nobody has received more AIPAC money than Donald Trump. So you have this organization, AIPAC, that helped and assisted financially to the tune, I think it's over $200 million for Trump 2.0 for him to get elected. While at the same time, these lobbyists have our Democratic leaders shackled. And so how does this help America first? How does this policy go along with you if you're a triple Trumper or if you're a one-time Trumper and you voted for an American first agenda? I've read somewhere that it costs around $200 million a day for Benjamin Netanyahu to commit war crimes in Gaza, and Americans without health care are paying for this. But what the second part I want to address about this interview that Trump had with the Daily Caller is that Israel is losing popularity both with the left and with the right. And you see people on the right like Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking out against this. And don't be fooled by that because they don't give a shit about human rights. They cherry pick which human rights they want. And if the Democrats don't step up and fill this vacuum and have moral clarity on this issue, we are going to hand over this country for decades of fascist rule. Truly, I really believe that. If Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and all of the other, we did a roll call about a month ago episode, if they do not get out of this very precarious, horrific situation that they have put themselves, their constituents, and this country in, they're going to leave a vacuum for grifters to come in and fill it.
Well, world leaders are gathering this week to talk about the genocide in Gaza. Do you know who's notably absent from that? The United States. Because why? Because we have so much money being poured in to support Israel that we are sitting there watching a genocide and everybody's acting like it's normal. And you're right. If we do not do something, Democrats and Republicans are going to be voted out of office. I really believe that.
All right. And then here's another coming out of the White House, you guys, they just lie and lie and lie, and it's rarely checked by legacy media. Pop this up. So the White House puts out, the president just claimed $8 trillion in tariff revenue. And that actually has not happened. Justin Wolfers, who is an economist at the University of Michigan, says it's his imagination and we're just lucky to be living in it. And he made a chart which actually puts the total. Actual tariff revenues are 115 billion. So think about that disparity. 8 trillion is what Trump and the White House say. And the reality is 115 billion. A judge recently ruled that these tariffs were illegal. And now there is talks that the United States government is going to have to refund these tariffs. This administration is an absolute shit show. They do not know how to govern. They have these ideas from these grifters like Peter Navarro and others who, again, are broken, emotionally stunted wannabes who think they can come in here and rule and dominate and make history. And they're crumbling our nation before our very eyes. And think about it like this. The conservative party, the conservative movement, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, if they would have seen United States of America military soldiers on their hands and knees rolling out the carpet for Vladimir Putin, who since the summit has been even more provocative in his attacks on Ukraine, which shows what disrespect he had for that entire summit. I even saw a little conspiracy theory online that when Putin shook Kanks's hand, that maybe he passed some sort of, Putin's notorious for poisoning people. Kank's health, it wasn't in great shape then, but it sure has face planted since then. What's your take on that, Pumps?
Okay, on the tariff stuff, on the revenue, I mean, we have Doge lying about what they did. We have the CDC now putting out false data. Job numbers have to be redone because he doesn't like him. The reality is the United States of America cannot be trusted. What the White House tells us is not trustworthy, full stop. And in terms of the Putin thing, I've really thought about this because I think Putin's best friend is Donald Trump because he's so incompetent. He doesn't give a shit. He dog walks him all over. He humiliated him over the weekend.
No. Puppet. Best puppet.
Best puppet. Yeah. He is the most useful idiot because if you got somebody else in our presidency, you might have some pushback. You might, even in the Republican Party, you might have a competent plan to stop Putin, but not here.
In a normal presidency, Putin would have never been in Alaska. There would be sanctions out the wazoo. We would be united with Europe in making sure that we keep NATO intact, in conservative or Democratic presidency. This is a man who is clearly compromised by Vladimir Putin, and everybody surrounding Donald Trump engages. Once they capitulate to him, they become worse of a human being than they were before. And I'll just use the example of Ted Cruz. If 10 years ago, if I said, Pumps, do you think Ted Cruz could be worse? Do you think he could be a bigger piece of shit? You would have said, I don't think it's possible. Enter Donald Trump. Donald Trump calls Ted Cruz's wife ugly, says your dad killed JFK. How does Ted Cruz respond? He gets to the RNC, where Grindr crashed twice, by the way, where everybody had on maxi pads on their ear. And he says with a straight face, God bless Donald Trump. The moral collapse of these human beings surrounding him is breathtaking. And here is what the American people think about these illegal tariffs. Play the clip.
Note, it was not just the base, it was the overall American public, and they have turned against tariffs the same way college football pundits have turned against Arch Manning after his performance in Columbus on Saturday. Look at this. New tariffs on imported goods. You go back to November of 2024, look, the popular position was favor. They favored new tariffs on imported goods, 52%, 48% opposed. You go to this side of the ledger, look at that, the opposition up like a rocket. We're talking about 60% opposing new.
Okay, and this is just, these are the results before they really start taking effect.
Right.
And it's important to note that Trump is underwater on basically everything, but because he operates a propaganda machine like all authoritarians do, like all dictators do, he is either told by his handlers who are really ruling the country, oh, you have a 90% approval rating. Oh my God, we have $8 trillion in income. So you have these optics of this propaganda machine that's feeding this bullshit to the American public that isn't intellectually curious enough and is very intellectually lazy, that all they do multiple times a day is pull up to Fox News and receive that information as fact, when in fact that information is false and dangerous and is going to harm their families and their communities and their countries more than the legacy media has the balls to tell them. And lastly, I want to leave you with a headline that I found incredibly interesting. Pop this up. The New York Times, finally, a really good headline here. Crime festers in Republican states while their troops patrol Washington. GOP governors who have mustered troops for duty in blue state cities may re-examine their deployments if federal intervention brings crime down. So we live in a red state, as all of you know, Oklahoma. The crime rate in Oklahoma is higher than it is in California. And you would think that the Bible Belt states, and these are the most parasitic states. These are the bottom 10 states. These are the states where the people in their communities have their religion weaponized against them, where they have the politicians scare them about drag queens, about liberal white women, about Black people, about immigrants. And meanwhile, they erode their hospitals, they erode their services. There's no infrastructure spending at all. These people are lied to by these fake Christian politicians, and they are sending our state troops to Washington, D.C. You would think that these governors would be begging, we have high crime rates. Trump, please send it here. But no, they're about states' rights. They want to take away your right to go to the OBGYN and have an appointment by yourself with you and your doctor. These freak show fake Christians want to be right in the middle of your pap smear.
Well, not only that, they want to prevent any blue city. I mean, the more I think about it and the more I read about it, this is all, they're going to have troops in every blue city before the election, so we don't have a midterm. I mean, I hate to say that, but I think it's coming. And thank goodness we have some Democratic governors that are speaking out, because we certainly don't have any leadership in U.S. Congress speaking out.
And we always get people on the left get accused of being hyperbolic. And I just want to note that right here on this podcast, IHIP News, and our other one, I've Had It podcast, during the election, we spoke about Trump rounding up immigrants and putting them in concentration camps. We suspected that that's what the plan was. In fact, that's what they're doing. And they're not just doing it on American soil. They're shipping them to Uganda, to El Salvador, and other places without due process. So when you hear Pritzker and Newsom talk about what he's trying to do, he is trying to subvert democracy on purpose, because these policies are that unpopular. And think about it like this. All of these God-fearing, triple-trumping patriots, they used to talk about the founding fathers. They used to talk about the Constitution. You never hear that anymore. Mm-hmm. You never hear it anymore. All right, please support us, Pumps and Me, by going and buying our book, which is still available. It was the hottest summer read, and now we're just segueing that in. It is the hotter than hot fall read. And so you can buy this, and the link below is in the show notes. Subscribe and like, and we'll see you all later today for more news. Pumps and I need to share with everybody that we have written a book. It's called Life is a Lazy Susan of Shit Sandwiches. And believe it or not, Pumps and I have not always been so rock solid. And we talk about all of our trials, tribulations, most of all our fuck ups. Yes, because fuck ups are relatable and a part of the human experience.
I have gotten so much feedback regarding the book that because of my situation with the religion and addiction and all that people relate to that. So I do think there's something to take away that's comforting about it, because we've all been in very difficult situations.
And listener, what we want you to do, this is the it book for summer reading. So please get your copy of Life is a Lazy Susan of Shit Sandwiches and take a picture of yourself with the book in really great places and tag at I've Had It podcast, and we will share your images with our summer
It book. You can buy it in bookstores. You can buy it in the link in our bio. You can buy it at Target, Walmart, Amazon, etc., all the retailers. Happy reading and happy summer.